Hello and welcome to Cooking for Baby. Cooking for Baby is a series of programs that will show you how to make simple, healthy, home-cooked food from the very first taste right through to toddler meals that the whole family can enjoy. So let's start at looking at the very first taste your baby's going to have of real food. You may say, well, why am I making my own baby food? First of all, go and treat yourself to some long-life baby food from the supermarkets. Dip a spoon in and have a little taste. And you might be surprised, and I think you'll be surprised, how much it doesn't taste like food that you've made yourself. I'm going to show you how to make really good foods to start with, really good ingredients to start with, and then a bit later on I'm going to show you how to make some really simple no-cook purees. First things first, whatever you're like in the kitchen for yourself, you're now dealing with your baby's first food. So it's time to step up the mark a little bit on hygiene. So let's start with washing our hands. It's also worth thinking about just making sure that everything's spotlessly clean. And a good way to do that is if you've got a dishwasher, put your dishwasher on the hottest setting and everything you use just run it through the dishwasher. If you don't have a dishwasher, then while you're washing up, make sure that you treat yourself to some rubber gloves and make sure the water is really, really hot and allow everything to air dry. It's a great way to make sure that everything's just clean. Okay, so we do peel at this stage, and the reason that we peel is that that's where a lot of the roughage is. Although roughage is good when you're older, babies find roughage too much for their little intestines. It's quite coarse roughage, as the name suggests, and it will basically cause some irritation on the intestines. So always peel at this stage, and then as your baby comes up to around about the age of 10 months or a year, then you need to worry less about peel. Once it's peeled, cut the pear into quarters so you can cut out the hard core centre. It's the same principle whether you're doing apples or pears. Some babies take apples harder to take than pears as their first food. So you just cut out the middle core, and then once you've taken the hard core out, cut them into really small bits. And you'll see that whether I'm making a fruit puree or a vegetable puree, one of the things I'm really keen on is cut it down into really small bits to start with. This means that when you're cooking it, it'll cook really quickly. The middle will cook a lot quicker than if you put great big large pieces in. I'm not one of those professional cooks. I do it the same way as you do at home, just as quick and roughly as you can, but nice small bits. Then once it's chopped, just simply put it into a small saucepan. You can also steam a lot of the fruits and vegetables, and I'm a big fan of steaming, and I'm going to show you how to do that with some of the other ingredients. But for things like apples and pears, the pan method's really simple and really good. But for this, I'm just going to add a dessert spoon of water. I'm using water that's been boiled because if your baby is under 6 months, it really is recommended that any water that you give your baby has been boiled rather than just straight from the tap. Once your baby's over 6 months, then tap water's fine. Then cook it on a gentle heat, so you're not bringing it up to a vicious boil to start with, just a gentle heat so that the fruit starts to cook down, you get a bit more juice out of it, and then you want to bring it up to a simmer and cook it for just 10 minutes. I know it sounds really simple, but even the most foodie parents find weaning a little bit daunting to start with. So all you're doing is cooking down pure pears to a smooth puree. Whether you're cooking with apples or pears, particularly if you're using dessert apples, you'll find that they hold their shape, so they're cooked, but they look still solid. Best way to taste it is just take a little bit that looks as though it's still quite hard and one piece. Take a little teaspoon and push it, if you can catch it, on a spoon, and you'll see that it soon squishes down to a nice smooth softness. So we're ready. So the pears are cooked, but we now need to turn it into a smooth puree. Now the old-fashioned way of doing this is to squeeze it through a sieve, a very fine metal sieve with the back of a spoon, which you're welcome to do, but actually I think time's a little bit too precious. So one of the things that a lot of people reach for is a hand blender. Now the hand blender with this kind of attachment gives you an okay puree, but at this stage, because your baby's only ever had milk, any texture is a little bit of a surprise to them, so you want to get it as smooth as possible. So instead, get rid of this bit and invest in a hand blender that has a herb chopping attachment like this at the bottom of it. pour the puree into the chopping attachment. You won't need necessarily all of the juice, and so just make sure you get the solids rather than the juice at this point. You can always add a little bit more juice at the end. Pop the lid on and give it a blitz. Now I've chosen to use pears because they actually blitz down really quickly and really smoothly. When you do some of the more interesting harder vegetables, they will actually take a little bit longer to blitz down. So all I'm looking for to see if there's any little bits left, which I can tell this is fine. And it's a very smooth, simple puree that we've got left. Now you can either choose to serve this a little bit to your baby now, obviously allowing it to cool, but a little bit of preparation means that you've got something for a few days' time. So the best thing to do, I think, is to freeze some. Okay, so what we're doing is just pouring a little bit into each of these cubes. They have handy little lines which will tell you that you've put enough in. When things freeze, they expand a bit, so it stops the lid from popping off. And when up to the line is around about 30 grams, and that will be plenty for the first few tastes. Hungry babies will like a little bit more than that before too long. What you're not trying to do in the first stage of weaning is give your baby a great big full meal. What you are doing, if you think about it this way, is just giving baby a taste for new foods and new tastes. So all my first stage purees are always single variety purees, just pure ingredients, just pure pear, just pure carrot, sweet potato, and so on. You shouldn't put hot things straight into the freezer, so pop the lids on and allow them to cool. You can pop them in the fridge just to cool off before putting them in the freezer. And in your own freezer, so long as you've made sure you've checked the temperature that it's at least -18, it'll be fine for up to 3 months.